All right, so we're still trying to, build on the information we're getting from Mr. Mike Silver. It's great information. Feel like I know him a little bit better. I hope everyone else feels that same way. Um, and along with those same type of questioning, those same type of terms, I had another question. Can you describe an instance where you faced an ethical dilemma, and how did you resolve that? And kind of tie that into whether it was inside the courtroom or outside the courtroom, or both, if you have that time.
When I was a prosecutor, we were prosecuting an individual who was charged with selling drugs. And we were having a jury trial. And the way the facts were, the cops did an undercover buy to this individual, but they didn't arrest him on the spot. They arrested him later.
Okay.
And, we're trying the case and just normal jury trials, going through the motions and calling the officers, and the officers are testifying, and you know, everything seemed, you know, just normal jury trial.
Right.
And then we broke for the day, and the next day, the defendant, and very rarely do defendants testify in criminal felony cases, but in this
Okay.
case,
Okay.
the attorney called his client to the stand, and when he was walking to the stand, he was walking with a severe limp, like he was clearly disabled,
Wow.
and it just blew my mind because when the officers are describing this person, right,
Hmm.
they described him as, hey, black male, whatever height, whatever complexion,
Hmm.
but it shook me because when I saw him walk, the way you would describe him is the disabled part.
Right.
Like,
That'd be the first thing you see.
yeah, I mean, yeah, like
That stands out.
that's the thing, that's the identifying feature of this
Right.
guy.
Right. Right.
And so it turns out that guy got shot in the head in Boston in something like a while ago. So he was physically disabled,
Wow.
and you know, and so the ethical dilemma is, I don't think this is the right person.
Mm.
Right?
Right. Right.
Like, and it's like as I'm sitting here watching this, you're sitting there, you're in the middle of a trial, and you're like, I don't think this is the guy. Like, like, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
and
Hmm.
the cops at the time, it was, I don't want to name the law enforcement agency, but
Hmm.
the cops were like, I think he's faking. That's not it.
Wow.
And so the ethical dilemma I had was, all right, do we send it to the jury, thinking the jury's going to do the right thing and dismiss it, right? Because
Hmm.
I just did not think a jury would convict at that point.
Hmm.
And so, well, do you send it to the jury?
Right.
And if they do convict, do we kind of say, all right, look, judge, we know that they found him guilty, but we need to do something?
Right.
And or do you just dismiss the case, right?
Mm.
Thinking, I didn't, honestly, I was kind of like, I'm not really sure, right?
Right. Right. Right.
But in the end, I said, just dismiss the case,
Wow.
and that ethical dilemma just being that, like, I don't. I have doubts if this person is the person that we are
Right.
purporting to. I don't know if this is the person that y'all sold the drugs to on that day.
Right.
But we're at a place in the trial where it's kind of up to the jury to figure out if that's the right person,
Right.
or
Right.
to
Right.
figure out if any of the if any of this was real or not. And so I
Hmm.
was kind of like, we let the jury figure this out.
Wow.
But in the end, I just dismissed it and just told the judge, look, we're going to dismiss the case.
Huh.
Um,
Wow.
and I think the thing with any ethical issue, right?
Mhm.
The key to any ethical dilemma is put a spotlight on it, right?
Mhm.
Like if someone's accusing you of, I don't know, hey, you're embezzling money, right?
Mhm.
Hey man, call the auditor in,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
call
Right.
the auditor in, right? If
Sure.
someone's accusing you of unethical behavior or conduct, it's like, okay, investigate it,
Right.
look at it, let's figure it out, right? And I think that's how, either deal with it on the spot if you can, if you're in a situation to, or two, hey, bring out an outside agency, bring in somebody and say, hey, let's see what it is. If someone says, hey, Mike Silver's dismissing tickets for all of his friends,
Right.
it's like, hey, bring in the SBI and let's look
Let's
at,
check this out.
let's check it out.
Yeah.
Let's let someone else do it. And then if they say, hey, it's clean, then you can say, okay, look, somebody outside said it's clean.
Like an independent agency or
Right.
something like
But
that.
then the independent agency could come in and be like, hey man, this looks crazy. Right.
Okay.
But then but that's how I think you have to deal with any of that ethical stuff. In the courtroom, so injustices in the courtroom, when you talk about district court is not a court of record. And so what that means is like there's not a court reporter there. There's not really a transcript of the majority of things that happen in district court. So like if you go to traffic court, or if you go to domestic violence court, if you go to just general criminal court, there's no court report. There is there is a court reporter in juvenile, in the H&I felonies that they do in district court. There's a recording of that. So there are in certain instances, but the majority of that stuff is not being recorded.
Oh wow!
And so when if and because of the volume, right? If you go to court and you know post COVID, right, or you've been there pre COVID. You know how it is if you go to court. You in there with 200 people, and it's going to be an all day thing, right? And so when you think of the volume of cases and the fact that there's no kind of recording, right? If someone's representing themselves, that's the place where they're most likely to kind of get their rights violated, right? The place. That's because there's a bunch of cases. Everybody's flowing. Most people who are sitting there are worried about their case. They're not really watching case to case. They're looking for their attorneys, or they're looking at the judge, and they're trying to gauge how the judge is. They're looking at the DA and trying to figure. There's all these other things that are happening, and so it's not that injustices like. I don't believe injustices routinely happen in district court, but what I do think is like that's a place where if it's going to happen, that's a easier place for it to take place just because of the way the system is set up. And that's why it's important to have good prosecutors, right? That's why it's important to have good defense attorneys. That's why it's important to have judges and good clerks, right? Like I can't tell you how many times clerks will say, hey, that judgment's not right. Hey, this isn't filled out right. Like the clerks are like so super valuable in that process, right?
Wow.
But if your clerks aren't being mindful, if the DA's not doing what he's supposed to do, if the defense attorneys aren't doing what they're supposed to do, the judges are doing what they're supposed to do, it's really set up to be not advantageous because let's say something does go awry and you get convicted of something, right? Your redress of that is to appeal it to Superior Court to have a brand new trial. That's a longer process.
More expensive.
It's more expensive. Sometimes you might get placed under another bond. Sometimes that can happen. And
if you have a lawyer, it's like triple the price. So all kinds of things.
And it's just time, right? I mean, if you go to court, one thing you know is if you can get it done in the first 4 times, you're doing good, right? I mean, you can go to court continuance after continuance after continuance, and you're missing your work. You're just whatever your schedule is, it just throws all that off. And these are like those are kind of like subtle injustices, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm here, and not just as defendants but victims, right? If you're the victim of a crime and you show up because you're a defendant, that's his court date, and you show up and you wait around all day, and then they recess, and then you don't get a chance to talk to the DA because we go out the back way, and you know what I'm saying, and then we come back, and then you turn around, it's lunchtime, we take that hour and a half lunch break, and then by the time you come back, it's 4 o'clock, and then we say continuance. We're like, why have been there all day, right? And you got to come back, and that's hard for people, right? We say we talked about earlier, like how much work can you miss for stuff, right? And
definitely an injustice.
I mean, for the defendants, but also our victims, because a lot of times what happens with our victims is look, one time they're frustrated, second time they're like, I don't care, I don't care, I ain't coming to do this again.
And depending on that situation, you're making them relive entire scenarios where they're ready to put it behind them and be done with it, whatever it is, and that's horrible to make people the mental, that's terrible.
So I think there's the big injustices of like, hey, your rights being violated, but then we have these like social injustices that take place in the system of re-victimizing our victim by saying, hey, I'm over this situation, but yet I've been to court 5 times for it, right? Or hey, I've had to miss 5 days of work because I keep coming to court and this case keeps getting continued, whether you're a defendant or a victim, right? It's like at a certain point, let's just do something, right?
Right.
Or if you know we ain't gonna do it, do I even gotta be here?
Right.
Right? Like if we know we continuing it, do I really gotta show up just to
Right.
say continue? Or if you're gonna make me show up, can we get it done by 10 so I can get to work?
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like,
really.
does it have to happen at noon? Right?
Right.
Yep.
And those are things that I think need to be addressed in the system. Like obviously we need to protect people's rights and do all that stuff, but we
Sure.
also got to make sure we're being efficient with people's time,
Right.
And making sure that the defendants, the victims, everybody feels like, okay, they're respecting my time, they're respecting my life.
So, kind of with that, with the situation we're in right now with COVID and everything going on, and cases are being probably all over the place, do you think that's improved any with how things are being managed now, time wise? Because it's not exactly the same. Are you taking the same amount of cases?
No, and I don't know what it's going to look like post-COVID, to be honest with you. I don't know what the dockets are going to look like, if they're going to be just backed up like crazy. A lot of it's going to depend on what the prosecutors do with a bunch of cases. Are they going to feel the need to dismiss a bunch of cases? Are they going to want to reduce a bunch of cases? Are they going to say, nope, we're plowing ahead with cases? And I don't know what their policy would be on that. But a lot of that's what's going to matter.
Right.
Well, I will tell you what concerns me though. So you talk about injustices, right? So, and this is kind of like a courthouse thing that people who work in the system know, but I don't think a lot of people think about. That so many people don't have their actual address as their license, right? Because you move, right? So what's on your license may have been your last spot or 2 spots ago, but you know, hey, the license valid, it works. I don't want to wait all day at DMV,
Right.
so we're just gonna keep it moving, right?
Right.
So if you got a ticket in COVID, and then COVID hits, right? Okay. Your case gets continued, and your case is kind of in this perpetual continuance at this point. Well, the way you're gonna get notified about your court date is you're gonna get mail from the clerk's office to say your new court date is X, but the information they're getting is off your license, which is on your ticket. And so if you don't get that mailing, how are the courts going to address that issue? Because the punishment for missing your court date, if you have a speeding ticket or something,
bench warrant.
Well, they're not going to bench warrant. They're going to revoke your license.
That's going to happen.
So then you're driving with a revoked license. You have no idea it's revoked.
And how many people in this community is that going to happen to? Right.
Right.
And so that's not going to be a one-person thing. That's going to be a bunch of people.
Right.
And so what do we do with those cases? And that's going to be the judges don't have discretion over that. That's a prosecutorial discretion issue.
Wow.
Are they going to dismiss these tickets? The judges are the ones who can say, hey, we're going to issue a failure to appear, or we're going to notify DMV to revoke the license. So judges have that discretion. And these are the conversations I think people should be having. Like, okay, how are you going to deal with these volume of people who have gotten charged with minor offenses, who are likely not going to get the correct notification of their court date? And what do we do with them? Right?
That's going to be a large volume. That's going to be a lot of people.
It's going to be a bunch of people. And it's not in anyone's interest to revoke a bunch of licenses.
Right.
But I don't know I don't know how they're going to do it. But these are like these injustices, and like those kind of things are like real issues in the system.
And that's just kind of an archaic when you think about it. Why in the world are we still mailing notices in 2020? Why are we not taking email addresses at this point, or text messages, or anything else that's an instant notification? It's almost like a setup. You know, it's purposeful almost to cause you to fail, to cause you to have to owe this money. Then your insurance goes up. Now you've lost your license. Now you can't drive to work. So there goes the money you were, it's such a trickle down effect, all because we can't move into an electronic means of.
Well, and the thing is, when your license is going to get revoked, you're probably not even going to know your license is revoked, right? Because
until you get stopped.
Until you get stopped, and some cops going to say, "Hey, man, you're driving on the road license." You're like, "What?" And there you go. But then, and people who work in the criminal justice system know about like the DMV trap, which is once your license gets revoked, if you don't get a hold of that thing early,
We've both been there. It's just a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare.
It's absurdly expensive, and
years to get out of it.
It's incredible. So like when I was in the DA's office, I used to work the front desk on Fridays. I used to send the legal assistant home and be like, "All right, I'm gonna work the front desk." And you could ask Jocelyn over there at the courthouse now. She'll tell you. Anybody down there tell you. Public will come up. I got it. Hey, I'm from Fayetteville. I got a court case. I missed my court date. Go down to the clerk's office, resolve it. We strike the OFA fees and be like, all right, it's going to take 24 hours for DMV system to catch up with the clerk system, but you'll be able to get your license on Monday. I can't tell you how many people we did that stuff for. And like, because that's the thing, right? Like people come in, you got these old court cases, and what we going to do, man? Like, why charge people 20? I mean, it could cost you $8,000 to get your license. I mean, we've seen it in, striking fees, and you could ask our district court judge. I used to hunt them jokers down all over the courthouse, signing these, striking the fees. You can't really do it. The legislature makes it a little more difficult to do it now. They kind of changed some rules, but back in the day, you could just get a judge to sign off on that stuff and just strike fees and strike costs. And get it where people can be like, all right, look, all you gotta do is pay this, whatever this amount is. If you take care of that, you can go get your license next week. And that's the stuff that we gotta do, right? And what we need to do is get rid of the silly stuff. And like traffic tickets are traffic tickets, right? And I get it; it's a safety thing. We're enforcing the law, cool. But these things need to flow because we don't need to grind our wheels on this, so we can actually focus on the serious stuff, right?
Right.
We need to be able to say like, hey, let's not spend a ton of time dealing with stuff that's serious. All crimes are serious, but we can also recognize that we want people to have licenses, and we don't want to revoke people's license for speeding tickets. I mean, if you're going 100, that's a different conversation. But for just general speeding tickets, that's just getting stuff out of the way and get to the actual stuff that matters. That
instead of backing up the court system,
right? Instead of backing up over just what I think is foolishness.
Right. Gotcha. Hey man, well, we got everything I think we need for now. It was perfect. You took your time and answered everything. Sounds great. So we want to thank you for taking your time out of your schedule to chat with us and have this conversation, man.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I know I probably went long on some of my answers.
It's all right. It's perfect. It's perfect.
I just love what y'all are doing, and hopefully more candidates will come, and y'all can really dig into this. It's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much. Man.
So let's hear, can you give your social, your site and all of that so people can find you?
Yeah, so on Facebook and Instagram is Mike Silver for Judge. The website is MikeSilverforJudge.com. Kind of just a short statement about what I'm about. If listening to this, I'm really big into being a community servant. I really am big on being a person who's in our schools, who's in our communities, who's collaborating with leaders, who's trying to make positive change in our community because this is our home. And so I think I have the right legal experience with 8 years as a prosecutor, 5 years as administrative law judge. I think my service in the community hopefully speaks for itself, that I've been working hard since I moved here in 2007. And I think win or lose this election, you'll continue to see me do those things. But I do think winning the election gives me a different platform and a better place of which to be a role model, and a better place to advocate for the things that I care about, which, if you look at my community service, mostly it's about kids and school and education. That's kind of my thing. So, that's why I think I should be elected, because I think that, one, I think I'll be a good judge. I think I'll be fair and equitable. If you know an attorney, I encourage you to ask him about me. I really do. I pride myself on my reputation, and I'll let that speak for itself. But also just check out my website and say, hey, man, this is the work he's done, and this is what he's done in the community, and this is what we could expect to see from him in the future.
thank you for tuning in to the podcast. Hopefully you were informed and received some new information.
And we'll be back next week with another episode. If you have questions or topics or comments that you would like to see on the podcast, you can email us at info@voteonpurpose.org. We would love to hear from you. We're also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all those places for social media. We really appreciate you listening and hope you take the time next week to tune in as well.
That's right. Get involved, tune in, and keep an eye out for us.